Which of these maps will take the crown of the best map, and which will earn the Fires of Damnation? Let's get ranking. Hello and welcome back to Tricolor Gaming with me, Fletcher, and let's get to ranking the maps of the game. Now before we start with the list, let me go through the rules for this ranking system. Firstly, none of the square maps are going to be used here, as the square maps can become any map you want using the terrain tools. Secondly, the maps are being judged based off their standard forms, so this is without flattening, with any of the map expansion mods, and without looking at the alternative versions of the maps that the last update added. Thirdly, the maps are being judged out of 5 points in 4 categories. Terrain paints, that is, are the paints we have a good selection of colour and texture that give us options. Backgrounds, do the maps have nice decorative backgrounds with interesting features? Natural elements, do the maps feature natural water, pre-made lakes, height differences and such? And space use, do the maps have a good shape with clean borders? Or do we have to massively plateau them just to build flat parks? And just one last point, maps are not being judged on overall size. Right, so now that's clear, let's get started with the worst maps. At 19th place we have Sierra Nevada. This map scores low for a number of reasons. Firstly, the map, due to its snowbound nature, ruins all of its texture paints, so there's basically no reason to have them. Secondly, the background is pretty dull, with only simple mountains in the background. Thirdly, there are no real natural elements, just limited to this river-like feature that runs through the map. But because it doesn't extend beyond the boundaries, it sort of stands out. Fourthly, the map, due to being sloped quite significantly, it means we have to have a lot of plateaus and will inevitably lose space using the in-game terrain tools. Finally, the map earned a further negative, as the map is just yet another of the Alpine or Taiga style maps, of which we have many in-game. At 18, we have San Marie Bay. This map is seriously hampered by the natural lagoon, which is a pointless and badly implemented feature to the map. The same lagoon ruins the space use on the map too. It scores okay in terrain paints that could be better, but there's some nice ones here. In terms of the background, it's again pretty boring. All in all, the map scores an average of just 1 point. Number 17, SANTAEGIGIUS Island. With an average score of 1.625, this small map scores okay in the terrain paint and the background. It has the unique natural feature of being a whole island more or less, with some nice beaches, and is mostly okay in space use. All in all, it's a fairly okay small map with nothing very interesting going on. Tied in 16th place, we have Oregon and Pennsylvania. These two maps share the same average score of 1.75. Looking at Oregon first, the map benefits from a high ranking due to its textures, which are very suitable for making interesting enclosures. It also scores good on space use, thanks to being relatively flat and open. The background is okay, but it scores badly on having very few natural elements due to having no real interesting features. It also scored a negative for being an overused biome. Pennsylvania, meanwhile, only scores well on its space use, thanks to being flat and open. Its terrain paints are mostly a dull mix of various grass patterns, making it difficult to make interesting enclosures, while it scored badly on the background due to not really making use of the airport, which is fairly static, and the rest of the area is just orange and red trees. In terms of natural elements, the map scored badly because the excessive use of the orange and red trees is just very vulgar to me, and also means the map is stuck in just one season. At 14, we have Arizona. One of my favourite maps in general, the Arizona is for me a forgotten gem. While it scores nothing for natural elements, and its background is fairly boring, the terrain paints do give a range of colour, and the space use on this map is great, being wide, open, flat and circular. All in all, one of the best maps in the game in my eyes, with an average score of 1.875. Number 13, Washington State. This map, with an average score of 2.125, scores pretty well in most categories. Its terrain paints are a good mix, and its background of lakes, mountains, and this dominant central peak make for interesting backdrops. It also scores well in its space use, being open and flat. It does, however, score very badly on natural elements with nothing really on the map, and it also suffers from the overused biome penalty. At number 12, San Albertus Peninsula and Southwest USA. These two maps are joint with an average score of 2.25. They both do different things well and not so well. San Albertus scores fairly average with its terrain paints and space use, but scores better with its decorative background and natural elements that include various height differences. Meanwhile, Southwest USA inside the Grand Canyon actually scores good points for its natural elements that include these wonderful stone towers, and while some areas are narrow, the map itself as a whole offers enough space to build interesting parks. It does score low in its terrain points and its background is fairly dull, but on the whole this map is potentially better than many think. At number 10 we have Isla Nublar 2015. This map scores well in its terrain paints. The tropical biome texture choices, including nice sand, proper mud, and textured rock surfaces all over, give us plenty of choice for our enclosures. It also scores nice on its space use, thanks to being mostly wide, open, and flat. It does, however, score lower thanks to being fairly boring in terms of natural elements and having a bland, mostly one colour background. It comes in about halfway up the board with an average of 2.5. San Diego sits at number 10, and it's one of my favourite maps with a score of 2.625 average. This map scores well in its space use thanks to the open space and flat ground, while also scoring high in its background thanks to the ocean and the city in the background. It scored okay in its natural elements thanks to the amphitheatre. Number 8 is shared by Germany and Great Britain. Paired with a score of 2.75, these two European maps score identical in their features. They both have okay terrain paints with some that could be better. Both have okay backgrounds mostly set on the seafront. They score well in natural elements thanks to water features, natural heights, and some interesting map shapes. Space use is also generally good with flat ground, open spaces, and even though there is some narrowness to the Great Britain map, it helps to create a more interesting map overall. At number 6 we have California. With a score of 2.875, this map has a pretty good average. Its terrain paints are good, as is its space use, and it has a huge range of natural features set around these brilliant ridges. It also has a good decorative background. It does, however, get a negative score due to its repeated alpine taiga biome setting. Having spoken to my friends that live in America, these American locations, California, Oregon, Washington State, Pennsylvania, do not all look the same, and it's a bit disappointing that 3 of them have identical biomes pretty much. If you're enjoying this roundup so far, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe for more content from all of us at Tricolor Gaming, and let me know down in the comments so far which map you think is going to win. Do it now. Pause the video and tell me down below which map you think is going to take the number 1 place and why. Into the top 5, and we start with Canada. This map scores 3 on averages and benefits from a decorative, beautiful background and terrain paints that work very well. It scores okay on natural elements thanks to the lakes and mountains on the map, and scores okay on space thanks to being a mostly well-made map that is flat in most areas. In all, Canada is one of the best maps in the game. Number 4 is SORNA Site B, narrowly beating out the Canada map by just 0.125 points. The Site B SORNA map is one of the most distinctive maps in the game thanks to all of its Jurassic Park 3 Easter eggs. It scores very well thanks to its terrain paints, those wonderful tropical versions, and scores high in its space use, being well laid out and relatively flat. The Easter eggs and tropical beachfront makes for interesting background details, while all the natural elements are okay. All in all, I quite like this map. And now we enter the top 3. And oddly enough, all the top 3 have the same average scores. Northwest USA, Isla Nublar 93, and the Biosyn Sanctuary all rate in at an average of 3.75. Interestingly, however, these maps have different pros and cons. Starting with Northwest USA, this map features some of the most amazing background and natural elements found on any map. Thanks to its mountain top location, we have brilliant surrounding views, a mix of pine forest and snowy peaks. The map itself is unique in shape and varies in height, allowing for interesting stacked parks. Meanwhile, Isla Nublar 93 scored higher in its terrain paints, those tropical ones again, and its natural elements thanks to height differences, natural lakes and islands, and that waterfall. Its only downside is the fairly boring background. The Biosyn Sanctuary comes with wonderful natural elements, including that misty fog that pops in now and then. Its terrain paints are unique and generally interesting, while its background with this river and the Biosyn building add interest. But I can't leave the video on a cop-out of the top 3 all being being equal. So where would I rank the top 3? Getting the bronze medal is the Biosyn Sanctuary. While a nice map, it does suffer from fairly boring foliage options, mostly just being pines again. Getting the silver, it has to be Northwest USA. It's a wonderful map with its only downside being the repeated alpine taiga biome. And of course, ISLA NUBLAR 93 gets the gold. It's just an all-round amazing place to build on. So there we have it, my final rankings for the maps. On screen now are the total points each map gained. Since I used averages for my ranking, the total points might interest folks. Let me know in the comments what your favourite maps are and why, and if you disagreed with any of my rankings. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe for more content from all of us at Tricolor Gaming. Until next time, stay safe and goodbye.